and welcome to Tara Mini Reads, Reviews, Discusses, Monologues about everything and anything, and that's on period. Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. So today I wanted to do like a deeper dive into a book series that I just finished reading. I sometime in Q1 of 2026. Now, this is an author that I have read some of her books before. But this is the first time that I kind of was like, I'm gonna attempt to finish all the books in this series because it's a lot of books. But what I wanted to do was after finishing each trilogy in this series, I would do a deeper dive into the books that I read in that trilogy, and this will be spoiler filled. So if you don't want spoilers, just maybe read my wrap ups of those books because I don't really go into too much details in the wrap ups. But this one would definitely go into spoilers, at least to some degree. I'm not gonna give too much spoilers, but uh, without talking too much, let's get into my book spotlights for the Farseer Trilogy. So, the first book in this, and I'll just pop them right here. So, I do have all three books. Ooh, the camera is not picking it up. Oh, that's not. Just put it like this. Okay, the first one is Assassin's Apprentice. This is by Robin Hobb. The second book in the series is Royal Assassin, and the third one is Assassin's Quest. I read all three of these books sometime in the month, sometime in this month and or in this year. I'm sorry, I keep saying month. I finished them, like right after each other. So it hasn't been up to 2 months since I finished the books. And so I am kind of like trying to remember exactly what I finished, but I want to give some thoughts because a couple of things stuck with me. Now, we start off Assassin's Apprentice with Fitz. Now, Fitz is the bastard child of Fitz of a Prince Chivalry. Chivalry is his dad, and this is in a kind of like medieval kind of England kind of vibe where you have a ruling family, and obviously whoever is next in line becomes the king. So they have this term called king in waiting, right? So if you have a sitting king and he has sons, whoever is next will be the king in waiting. So at the point that we meet Fitz and his family, his dad is the king in waiting because he's the firstborn son, and he's basically gonna take over after his dad, King Shrewd, you know, passes on. But because the news breaks that Fitz is a bastard born to Chivalry, Chivalry is embarrassed and decides to step down from the throne. So he no longer becomes king in waiting. He just becomes Prince Chivalry. And it is important to point out that he did not have kids with his wife, Patience. So Fitz is basically his only child, born out of wedlock. So Chivalry steps down. His brother, what's his name? Oh my god, I forgot his name. Verity. His brother Verity now becomes the new king in waiting, and this is the setup of Assassin's Apprentice. So Fitz gets introduced to his family, his biological family from the age of, let's say, 6 to 10. He's taken care of by an old retainer of his dad called I forgot his name. Uh I forgot his name, but Burridge. Okay, Burridge. Again, it's been a minute. So Burridge is the one tasked with taking care of Fitz. So Burridge is, taking care of Fitz. He's, caring for the boy. Again, he's pretty young, doesn't know anything, right? And at this point, none of his family kind of like I want to say like acknowledges him. They know he exists, but they don't really like care about him, right? Because Burridge is kind of in charge. Now, another thing I want to say about this world is in this world, there's a couple of things, right? There's a type of magic called there's a kind of magic where you can communicate or you can connect with animals. And then there's also another type of magic where you can basically phone someone telepath- telepathically, right? So Fitz, from a young age, we discover that he has the power to connect with animals. And so he bonds with this animal from pretty early on. Burrich catches on and tells him, you need to stop. This is something that is problematic because, people are superstitious of this kind of magic and they typically will kill someone that, is known to bond with animals. So from a very young age, it is impressed on Fitz that, he must not bond with any animal, right? And then basically he then kind of gets introduced officially to his grandfather, who is King Shrewd. And King Shrewd is like, you know what, I am going to make you my assassin. You will work for me. You're essentially my grandson, but I don't want to give legitimacy to you, but I will accept you and acknowledge you as my grandson, but as my assassin instead. So basically, Shrewd gives him this life path where he then sends him off to train with someone called Cade. Um, oh, Shade. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name. Shade or Cade, one of the two. And so Fitz, again, from a very young, impressionable age, is now, you know, working to become an assassin. So he's being schooled in, you know, poisoning and how to do it subtly, like don't get caught, that kind of thing. Learning too many plants and their uses, and mixing two different very weird plants together can have this effect on a person. So he's learning all of this from a really really young age and trying to prove himself to his king, to show like I'm useful, you can use me, blah blah blah. And then also Prince King Shrewd has three sons. He has Prince Chivalry, Prince Verity, and he has Prince what's his name? Uh Regal, yeah, Regal is the last one. So obviously the setup is you kind of know there's going to be like a secession kind of war thing going on. So you know from early on in the books you kind of know. Now another misconception about these books is that you think like you're getting into like swashbuckling, fighting and stuff like that. You do get that, but it's more a political intrigue kind of book where everything is really like you sneeze the wrong way and you're like you're killed, right? With the backdrop of a royal court and magic and this and that, right? So it's very rich in the story. It's just a bit different from what I expected. Like I thought like I was getting like, magic and fantasy and all of the regular elements that we're used to, but it's really not, right? So like I said, from a very young age. So from a very young age, Fitz is, taught how to be an assassin and nothing else. He doesn't really have the privilege to behave as a child at his age should, because of, the whole, you know, mantle that is placed upon him. And I think Robin Hobb did a phenomenal job because by the time you get to Assassin's Quest, you can see Fitz unravel and not in a really good way. I mean, he doesn't turn bad, but you just see him make decisions and you're just like, oh boy. But then I'm like, it makes sense. Like he doesn't know anything better. He's literally been placed in this ridiculous position from basically when he was young. Didn't have a father figure, didn't have a mom, didn't have anybody that really genuinely cared about him 100%, like no strings attached. Everybody that's connected to Fitz wanted something from him, and Fitz had to give it to them, one way or the other. So the book is so rich. I don't even know where to start. So, anyways, that's book one. We kind of explore Fitz is, he's, warming up to the idea that he's an assassin. He's exploring his surrounding. He gets, he meets some kids his age and, he plays with them. At some point he bonds with this dog. There's a lot of things going on. And by almost the end of the book, all of that is taken away from him when he now has to become the royal assassin. This is book 2, where he takes his lessons seriously. He's training with Shade, or Chade, whatever his name is, which I'm not gonna say too much on who that character is, but he's an important character. So, anyways, Fitz is then even sent on assignments to go be the king's assassin, to, assassinate people that are problematic to the crown, that kind of thing. So it's really interesting to see, he now starts getting a taste of independence. He becomes his own man in that regard of, I am, he's he's happy that, responsibility is being placed on his shoulder. This then all kind of tapers and goes down the deep end in this book, where Regal, who's the third brother, starts to make his move, or maybe he already started to make his move from book 1. I think he did, right? Because something about what happened to Chivalry just didn't make sense to me. And I really strongly think that Regal was involved. Again, this is not something that's confirmed in any of these 3 books, so maybe it's something that's confirmed somewhere else, or this is just my thinking, but I strongly believe that Regal killed his brother Chivalry. Um, this is not confirmed in the books. This is just me thinking, right? Because the way it happens is just like, And Fitz never met Chivalry, which is so sad. I was like, So anyways, in this book, remember how I said there was this other magic where you could kind of call someone telepathically? Fitz starts to train for that, in the hopes that he will become a couturier for the king, and he will be able to assist the king, who is Verity, right? And something goes horribly wrong. There's a test. He fails the test because the teacher does not like him. We get to find out that that teacher is actually working with Regal. So again, like I said, Regal just had a lot of plans, and he was kind of enacting all those plans really subtly. But at the end of the day, King Shrewd, for all his shrewdness, knew what Regal was doing and did not for once make plans to stop it. And I was so annoyed. I was so annoyed. I was so annoyed because I was like, and I get it, I'm like, he loves his son, but your son is basically killing your other sons and your other family members. Like, come on, dude. But Shrewd just basically let Regal do whatever he want. And so by the time we get to Assassin's Quest, everything bad that could happen has happened. Now, I'm saying all of this, I haven't even scratched the surface of the story. Okay, so we have a character called the Fool. Now, if you're familiar with olden day English, medieval England, they had these characters called fools or jugglers who their whole role was to humor and entertain the king, right? So they were basically like a talking TV. So we have this character called the Fool who works for the king and will only be in the king's presence, and he had his lodgings in the castle, and he was strictly would provide entertainment for the king. But on some occasions the Fool and Fitz would they would intersect, like their paths would cross, and the Fool will make a statement that is kind of like prophetic, in the way he says it, and Fitz is just like, what the heck are you talking about, right? So there's that Fool that then really becomes center stage at some points in the books, because you find out that the Fool is actually someone that has some prophetic power and can foretell things that are going to happen. So now let's get into the propellants for Royal Assassin and jump into Assassin's Quest. Now in Royal Assassin, right, at the backdrop of all of this intrigue that's going on is the fact that the people of whatever their name is, the Duchess, yeah, the 6 Duchess are fighting an enemy called the Red Ships, and they don't really know what's going on. They don't know how to fight this army, because what they do is the ships come to a village by shore. They raid the village. They take some people away, and when they bring them back, they are called forged, where they don't basically have any memories. They don't know who they are. They don't know anything. All they know is that they want to basically kill people. So it's a very cruel way, right? Because these raiders come, they steal people, basically someone's mom, dad, kids, and then they bring them back, and the family member is like, oh, here's my dad, you're back, and the dad is basically like, I don't know you and wants to kill you. So it was a really cruel way of, turning things upon itself. So basically the Six Duchies is facing this threat, and King in waiting Verity is trying to find a solution as to how to, curb this problem, right? And Verity spends all his time, fighting these people and trying to figure out a way to make life better because his people are suffering. Meanwhile, Regal is plotting on how to take over the throne. So just so you know what's happening. And then Shrewd knows all of this and just keeps his mouth shut. So, okay, Shrewd. So that's the whole setup. So at some point, because they're having so much trouble with these raiders, they're like, okay, regardless of what's going on, Verity needs to get married, right? Because Chivalry was married, didn't have kids, had to step down because his image was ruined. Verity's not married, Regal's not married, and they didn't have any other heirs. And if you know about this kind of families, you need an heir to keep the family line. So um Shrewd is pushing the fact that Verity needs to marry. So Regal is sent on a mission to go find a bride for Verity. And so he goes to this mountain area where this group of people, you know, um, they've been trying to establish relations with them. So they decide that, okay, their princess will marry the king, and that would foster relations between these two groups of people. They're kind of think of them as like the mountain tribe, and then the inlanders, and then King Trude and the chivalry family are like the outlanders, like they live more out of, what I'm saying. Anyways, Regal then secures the deal for this marriage treaty, and Ketrican is the princess of the mountain people, so she is then married to Verity. And so she moves from her village place to the city-ish, or closer to the sea. And so she becomes the queen in waiting, right? So at some point, right, Verity is like, well, the only way we can save our people, because this threat is not going anywhere, and I don't have, enough magic to hold them off. I also don't have this Kutari, the power of the Kutari behind me, because the magic, the people who have these abilities have been really not far and in between. So basically, this is a kingdom that's plagued with a lot of problems, right? So Verity is like, okay, fine. There's this lore of the fact that when our people, our ancestors, faced issues, they went to something called the Elderlings, and the Elderlings were able to help them. So maybe I can do the same, and I can help my people because they did pledge that they will help us. So Verity decides to go on a quest to go find the mythical Elderlings. And so Verity is gone for an extended period of time in this book, to the point where I actually thought that Verity died to some degree, even in Assassin's Quest. Like, I'm so convinced that he's dead, but he does kind of die, but in a very weird way. But anyways, so Verity is gone. And so once Verity leaves, this is when Regal enacts his plan and basically starts, moving the chess piece to make sure that, Verity doesn't come back and he becomes the next king. Not even king in waiting. Like, he was like, I'm skipping everybody and I'm going to be the king. And there's nothing no one can do about it. And that's kind of like, the whole kind of backdrop for this first trilogy. So Regal makes his move. He eliminates, um, he kind of does have a hand in his dad's death, like, is so sad. He tries to assassinate his brother Verity as he's on his mission. He does try to kill Fitz. Basically, he tries to kill everyone that can be a contender to the throne. Does he succeed? Not really, but a lot of things go down. Like, in this book, a lot of things go down in this book because Regal made his move, and for good or bad, it didn't really work out the way he intended. Fitz is supposedly dead at the end of the book, but he's not, because he was brought back to life by Burrich and Chade. And so Assassin's Quest is basically Fitz trying to revenge Verity, because in the last book, Verity had his people beat him senseless, and he's so filled with like revenge and like I must kill Verity. I mean, I must kill Rigo. I must kill Rigo. My king, who's Verity, is dead because literally everyone thought he was dead, and so this is basically the whole Assassin's Quest is literally Fitz trying to kill Rigo, which he he's not able to really do it. Well, to some degree he's not. This is also kind of like a traveling story because Fitz then leaves he leaves the castle. First of all, his first mission was so this is the first time that he's not in, control. No one is in control of him. He makes his own decision because basically he died. And so his first plan is I need to go and kill Rigo for everything that he did, right? Almost killing me, trying to get rid of Ketrican, killing my king. There's a lot of motivations for Fitz's decision, and I don't blame him, right? He really did go through a lot. So Fitz sets on a journey. He actually makes it to Rigo's house, castle, and he actually almost kills him, but remember how I talked about a coterie where it's like people that can telepathically call people? Okay, so and Fitz failed that test. Well, there was a group that the people that didn't fail the test, they formed this kind of like a coven kind of thing. So they were all fighting against Fitz. So in the mind, it's not something that you have to physically fight. It's a mind battle. So Fitz is fighting that in his mind, and he's also, trying to physically get to where Rigo is so he can assassinate Rigo. Unfortunately, that doesn't work, but he's able to escape, and that's when we find out that Verity is actually alive, and Verity kind of imprints on Fitz that you need to come to where I am, and kind of gives him this weird sense of where he is. And so Fitz then embarks on another journey and to travel to get to where Verity is in hopes of rescuing him. At the same time, the fool, remember the king died, and so the fool is kind of like um the fool escapes with Ketrican because remember Ketrican is the wife of Verity, and when the castle kind of like is when things are kind of going weird, Fitz is like, we need to get you out because I don't trust Regal. So Ketrican is able to get away from the palace with the fool, and she goes to basically her country and her people, and she's safe there with the fool. Fitz is able to meet up with them. At some point, they did think he was dead, but then he comes and the fool embarks with him on this journey to go look for Verity, right? Other things that happen is Fitz had a girlfriend called Molly. I don't really like that relationship, so I'm not really going to go too much into it. But there is a surprise for Fitz that he finds out through this telepathic thing that he has because he does have the capacity to telepathically call people, even though they failed him because obviously that was a machination of Regal. But he finds out in a very sad way. Burrich, who raised them up, is now kind of like tasked to take care of Molly, and something happens in that place. I honestly, this whole book is just messed up. Like Fitz, my boy is going through it. Like he went through it. This first trilogy, like this doesn't even scratch the surface of everything that happened to just one boy. Like he was so young. Like he's all of this, he's not even 20 or 21. Like he's super young and he has to go through so much betrayal, so much loss, so much pain. Whew, yeah, Robin Hobb really packed a punch with these books. Like all of them, exceptional. Exceptional. Like this is more a character thesis than anything else. There's magic, but it's kind of like really, it's like a magical realism kind of thing. Like it's barely there, and it's not even the main propellant of the story. The main propellant of the story is how Fitz is manipulated, betrayed, lied on, hurt. He's just going through everything that any human being can go through. People dump on him, and he's just like, keep going. So think of someone that has like 100 arrows at their back, and he's still like, I'm going. So that's basically Fitz. So, yeah. So like I said, Fitz. So at the end of this book, Fitz is, trying to find out where Verity is because Verity has been missing for almost a whole year. His kingdom is in shambles. Regal has usurped the throne, destroyed everything. He has left the people to suffer. And Fitz is like, we need to find Verity. He's alive. I just need to find him so we can go and save our people from the red ships, because yeah, the red ships are still there where all of this is going on. So, anyways, Fitz and the Fool embark on this journey. And oh. So remember how Fitz is not supposed to bond with an animal? He bonds with a wolf called Night Eyes, and Night Eyes becomes his saving grace because they are bonded for life. Night Eyes is a really, really interesting character. Fitz does spend some time as a wolf, and Night Eyes, just from the close proximity he has to Fitz, he kind of understands some human characteristics or whatever. At that point, Burich is like, he actually just gives up and is like, yeah, whatever, like, I can't help you anymore with this. But we do explore Fitz's relationship with Night Eyes, and I think that was beautifully done in that regard. I think Robin Hobb really has a good time of telling, you know, human and um creatures merging or something like that. She's really good about that. Anyways, they do eventually find Verity. Verity is busy doing something. Katrikin actually goes on the quest with them as well because she wants to find her husband. And she she was pregnant. Yeah, she was pregnant, and then she kind of lost the baby, and then so she goes along with them to go find her king. They do find Verity after a lot of like things that happen along the way. And when they find him, he's doing something that's so weird. He did find the Elderlings, but they are asleep and he didn't have a way to wake them up. They eventually do wake up the Elderlings at a steep cost. Verity is lost. Katrikin, something weird happens with Katrikin, Fitz, and Verity. I will leave you to read that. That happens in Assassin's Quest. But anyways, they're able to wake up the Elderlings, where the Elderlings turn out to be, surprise, surprise, dragons. So the Elderlings are dragons, and so they're able to rally the dragons to their cause, and the dragons are sent to go attack the red ships, which they do do that. They do that, and that's kind of like where the book kind of peters out. A lot of things happen between Fitz and Molly, Fitz and Night Eyes, Fitz and Katrikin, um, Fitz and Verity, right? And Fitz and the Fool. So that's, and then also Chade and Burridge. That's also another angle. So all of these people, Fitz has a lot of things, baggage that's going on with them that's not necessarily resolved at the end of this book. Also, Regal, I'm so annoyed at the way his ending is written, because Regal caused so much harm for what? It didn't even make sense. Like, it was just something that could have been avoided, and it just was all for, like, how she made this statement, is like a child that for some reason just wants to snatch the toy from another child. It's just being petty for no reason. That's exactly what Regal did the whole book. Is just he felt like Chivalry and Verity were his big brothers, and they were getting to do stuff, and he wasn't able to do stuff, and he was jealous and just was like, yeah, I should be the king, and just destroyed the whole family for that. But yeah, so that's basically like a very, very, very generalized, watered down version of what does go on in the book. So if if I said anything that kind of sounded familiar or you liked it, you can definitely read on. I know I have some spoilers here and there, but I mean, there's still a lot of stuff that happens that I just can't put it into words. Like, the books are so good. Yeah, I'm super excited to get into the Tawny Man, which is the next set of series, book trilogy, and this set in the Farseer Trilogy. But that's probably going to go more into detail with Fitz and the Fool, and we get to see more of what the Fool can do, because the Fool is now getting into his powers, and maybe he has more influence or magic than we were told in the first in this series. So we'll see. But anyways, thank you so much for listening to me yap. Let me know if you've read the whole Realm of the Elderlings trilogy. What did you think? Did you like it? You know, should I go on? Is there pain? You know, and if you could recommend some kind of books that some similar books like this, I would definitely be open to that. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Until then, bye.